Hey, I'm Armin van Buuren. You're here in my studio in Leiden in the Netherlands. And today I'm going to show you how I made my track Suddenly Summer. It's a vocal track that features the vocals of Anna Criado. They were written by Ras Nitzen and Adrian Broekhuizen. And the track was made for summer 2012. It's already out and it's doing really well. And I'll reveal you some of the secrets. For me, this is the most important part because this is a dance floor track, so you really want the kick and the bass line to sound really good on the dance floor. This is where I spend usually most of the time in the studio, making sure that the kick and the bass line sound really well. I'm in this studio. I know these speakers, they look incredible, but they're not meant to look incredible just because that's the reason why I bought them, because they look cool. But actually, these speakers were made by Misha Jacobi. And they were actually made for this room. A lot of people that build studios, they usually have a space available, and then they put some speakers there. But in this case, I sat down with Misha Jacobi, who also did speakers for the studios of Vedder Legrand and Benno de Goeij and Marco V. And I think he's working with some English producers as well now. So we sat down at the drawing table and we designed these speakers for this room, so I can hear how the kick and the bass are sounding together. Because a lot of times I hear tracks from other producers, and they're made on these small speakers, and you can't hear the kick and the bass drum fighting. You know, if you have a kick and a bass line going at the same time, they add up, so it makes your mix sound distorted, or it starts clipping. So with this particular track, if you have a really good kick drum but it doesn't match your bass line, it doesn't make any sense. So I made an EXS bank in Logic with a lot of different sounding kicks on different frequencies. So they're all good kicks. I know this because I heard them in my DJ sets. But the kicks are they're different sounding. So I have this kick, which is more of a low kick. I have this kick, all different kind of kick drums. That some kicks are self-made, some kicks are sampled, that they're all combined. But I just know that I have a bank of 36 kicks that I know that will really work. And if I know what bass line I'm going to use, then I usually decide which kick drum I'm going to use. So for this particular bass line, I use something completely different than I normally do. I never, like I said before, I never work in the same way. For this particular bass line, I thought it would be cool to use the Omnisphere. Omnisphere you usually use for pads or breakdowns or strings or more of atmosphere things. But there's some really great bass line sounds in the Omnisphere. So let's open up the Omnisphere to see where we are. And I actually went into the arpeggio mode. So this is one of the presets that I use, and I edited a little bit. It's a combination of TR SH101 sample and another deep sample. They're layered, and then there's a great arpeggio section in the Omnisphere. So I programmed the arpeggio so you get some sort of a nice drive, but you can hear it fighting a little bit. So this is basically I just thought that would be really nice as some sort of a bass line. I put some sidechain compression on it, and I use one of my favorite plugins. Actually comes from FabFilter. It's a Dutch-based company. One of the owners is Floris Klinkert. I know him. I made some music with him in the past, and they make some really great plugins. So this is kind of not non-standard for a bass line as well. It's a timeless delay plugin that I edited a little bit, and it just adds some juice to this arpeggiated bass line. So the bass line that I programmed is, I think it goes see. I'll show you the bass line. This is the bass line, the chord structure, and what I programmed is something like this. But if you turn on the side chaining, and then I've done some EQing on the bass line because I don't want the bass line to fight with the low end here. So combined with the kick drum, it does something like this. It just sounds, you know, just gives it the fab filter timeless delay. Just gives it some nice room. And there's also a little bit of on the bus. I put a guitar amp, which I removed all the low end, and some chorus. So you can hear the bass line giving a little bit more space in the mid frequencies. So it makes it sound a little bit more tough. So you get. You know, I like to have some sort of a tough drive to make it sound really cool. And actually, to add to that, I really like the atmosphere, the sound of the bass line. So the low end I liked, and I liked the kick drum. And then I actually copied the Omnisphere, and I put a phaser on top of the same notes. So this part is actually playing the same bass line, but I added a micro phaser, Logic's micro phaser on top of it. So it sounds something like this. So I put in an Effectrix, which is one of my favorite plugins. One of the presets called Scattering Beats, followed by the micro phaser, and then some EQ. So I've removed basically all the frequencies except for the mid-range that I wanted to do. So if you add that, so it's basically playing the same bass line part, but with a phaser. And if you add that to the track, it just makes it sound really like a nice atmosphere. So you get. So it's really a nice and cool, cool drive. You know, when you're on a dance floor, you want a bass line shouldn't bore you. It should be like, you know, you really get into the groove, and then you just add some elements to the bass line to help you with the arrangements. If the kick and the bass come in, and you really feel like, you know, yes, there's an explosion there, then it works. So. So for the drum programming of Suddenly Summer, this time I made it fairly easy for myself. Sometimes I just use some standard claps. I never want to use the same drums for a track. Sometimes if one clap really sounds great, I might add another clap to it, but I don't want my drums in every track to sound exactly the same because I think it's a little bit boring. So this is just a personal thing. So for this particular track, I just opened Ableton, and I just throw in on the 130 BPM. This track is 130 BPM, so I just throw in a lot of loops that I like for a drive. You know, that go with the, I think go well with the bass line. So for this particular track, I was able to find the original loops that I was working on. So for example, I use this loop that's over here. So it's nice, but you can hear some low frequencies in there that I'm afraid might clog up the mix. So sometimes what I do, and this is what I like about Ableton, you can easily remove all the things you don't want. You know, so I don't know how I did it in this track, but you hear a little tick going there, so might want to remove that. We don't want anything to tick. So. But the clap has some sort of a pre-roll, so I might want to do it like this. And I like my loops to live a little, so sometimes I might do the clap from the loop a little bit earlier than later, so you don't get the same clap everywhere. As long as it sounds really tight and it's really on the beat, you know. Everything's in, for me, mostly I work everything in audio, especially my drums, so they're really tight on the grid. So then I found some other loops that have some really nice claps in it as well. This is a snare, and if you add that with the clap, it just, you know, makes it sound really nice. And because one clap is longer than the other, you get some sort of a live feel to it, which is really nice. And then I added some other loops, and I cut these loops, you know, so I don't use the complete loop. Sometimes I like a hi-hat from a loop, or sometimes I like one particular sound in a loop, so I might cut it. So these are all the loops that I've used for Suddenly Summer. I also put some effects in there, you know, some crashes, because I really like to work quick, you know. If I'm looking for a drive, for me it adds on. It should really fit with the kick and the bass line, and you know, to have a nice drive in the track. So I'm not using all these sounds and loops as they are. I might put some effects on them, or I might cut them, or EQing I usually do in Logic. So what I do, I render this section. And what I really like about Ableton, you can say export audio video, and then you can put all tracks, and then it doesn't render the master only, but it renders all the individual tracks in this section. So I know the loops will be already very tight because it's 130 BPM, and I import the loops back into Logic, which is what I did here. So the drums you just heard are now here, and I color code them. And I make sure that they don't clog up my mix. So every loop that's imported back into Logic, I put some EQ on, so I don't want anything to mess with my bass lines and my kick drum. So there you go. Here are the loops, and if you hear the loops back in Logic, it sounds something like this. It gives it a nice drive, and for me, sometimes I make 20 loops, you know, claps, hi-hats, little close things, reverse, and then I try to find the loops that actually fit with my kick and my bass line. So for this particular track, I just put like sometimes maybe 20 loops, and I just turn on the loops that I think sound really nice and tight with the kick and the bass line. So. So there you go. For me, this has a really nice trancey drive. It's really, you know, like I said, this track is really made for a club. And if you hear this drive on a really big sound system, you just hear, you really get into it. And I can listen to this loop for hours without getting bored. It just sounds.
Summer moved on, gone with its meaning. Suddenly all that I have known, a world with no home.
And then I made some pads underneath it. Some really great pad sounds coming from the Nexus as well. This particular pad was a pad that I edited from one of the presets. So I called it Pad Female Gaia because it's really like dreamy. And also one of the sounds that I used in the breakdown is some strings for the atmosphere and some more pads from the Omnisphere, just to give it a nice atmospheric build, which is really important in trance music to create some sort of a nice atmosphere for the breakdown. So together with the strings, the pads, and the female vocal.
Summer moved on, gone with its meaning. Suddenly all that I have known, a world with no home. Denied years of memories, no future, no hope. Suddenly summer moved on. Summer moved on.
It's a really nice atmosphere, and after something beautiful like this within trance music, you want something to bring the beat back and something nice, melodic to really make the crowd go crazy. But you don't want to lose the atmosphere completely. So Anna Criado, the vocalist, she did some amazing ad-libs, and I just put a lot of auto-tune on it just because it's going to be in the background and it's not used for the lead. So if you put all the, this is what she did in the studio. I'll just remove all the plugins so you can hear what she did for the atmosphere. It sounds a bit dry now, a bit. So on that vocal, I put some pitch correction, some EQing, because I don't want the low frequencies of her voice to shine through. It's just, like a pad almost. Some compression again, and then there's the buses again that I've set up for the lead vocal. So her Space Designer, some stereo delay, some echo, and this rotor effect that makes it sound a little bit more special. And then I drown the vocal in reverb. That was actually set up by Adrian, who recorded the vocals. So this preset is called Thunderstruck, and I completely remove the dry signal, so you only have the wet signal. So if you drown that bit of Anna's voice that you just heard in that reverb, you get some sort of a nice atmosphere. So it's not meant as a lead vocal, but just for the atmosphere to continue throughout the track, so you have some sort of a link between the breakdown and when the melody comes back. So it sounds like this. So you hear it's a nice atmosphere that's going on there. And then after the breakdown, you want something of a big lead to come back with the kick drum and the bass line. So for this particular lead, I went into the Zebra plugin, actually, but I stacked it with a few other plugins. So the lead of this track sounds something like this. You hear a lot of reverbs going on there, and that might clog up your mix very, very quickly. Makes it sound very distorted and everything. But I'm using the sidechaining technique. This is something that's been used a lot, and I think the regular readers of the Future Music magazine know what the sidechaining is. So this plug actually goes into a bus, and the bus has got a big sidechain setup. So if I turn on the sidechaining here, you'll hear that it makes much more sense. And I've stacked I've stacked this particular sound with some other sounds. A lead coming from the silent. That's actually a distorted guitar lead, and another sound that comes from the silent again. So yeah, it's just in a little bit of trial and error. You just stack different synths playing the same melody line, and if you stack all those sounds together, you get a lead sounding like this. So it's basically this lead, the silent lead that has a distorted plug, and some sort of a rave sound that comes from the silent, and all together it just sounds, sounds really massive. Below that I have a pad going, just a string from the Omnisphere. So played all together, you have something like this. I programmed some snare rolls in the effects section to really make the breakdown happening. And then some more add-on melodies. I did the same trick that I did with the chords, the sidechaining here, with a pad sound that comes from the silent. Also, for the arrangement, I don't use it anywhere else in the track. Just here, just as an add-on, so you can build up towards the big breakdown that's going to come with the piano. And if you put Anna's drowned reverbed backing vocals, it just makes it sound really trancey and really nice. And there it goes into the breakdown, so really introduce the piano. So what I did, I had the piano chords, and to make the breakdown a little bit more interesting, I put also a solo piano right before the lead chorus comes in. So that's basically just a copy of the other piano line. And I like my tracks to have certain unique moments. Of course, you have the bass line that continues throughout the track, but this is a piano melody that only comes down in the breakdown. So if you want to hear it again, you have to play the track again. So it doesn't make it boring. Of course, the main chord structure is already there, but I like to add elements to certain parts of the track to make it less boring. If you really want to hear that part again, you have to re-listen to the track. So I try to add some elements to my track always that are unique to that section of the track. So, of course, the chords throughout the track are basically the same, but the track really should take you on a journey and tell a story and really tell the story of the vocal that's being sung. And then I start adding some arrangement things. For this particular track, I added some more bassline add-ons. So not really the bassline, but some more mid basses to make it maybe less boring for the arrangement. So in this particular track, I chose for an electro bassline. Actually, this bassline comes from the Omnisphere again. And it has a sample delay on it, so it sounds nice and out of the mid. So you use the full spectrum of your stereo image. And I also have a distorted bass line coming from actually a really great plugin that's called the Synthmaster. That somebody sent me. I really like this plugin. It has a lot of really cool lead effects and also some really nice bass lines. I just throw a bunch of plugins on them, just tweak. It's for me, it's an add-on, so it's not as important as the kick in the bass line and the loops and of course the melodies. But it's just nice to add something to the drive of the track, so you get something like this. And if you hear that with the rest of the track, it just adds something to the drive, so you get. And there's also some chords that you hear going on. Basically, these are the chords of the breakdown. And because I already decided what my main melody is going to be in the breakdown, I can, use sort of really build up towards the lead. So the first two chords of the breakdown are actually looped here. So I just hold this chord and put a huge sidechain compressor on it. So I have to switch on the sidechain so you can hear. It's a pad from the Nexus again. And it has a big reverb on it, some EQing. And those are the first. That's the first chord of the breakdown. So you can really, in your arrangement, build towards what's going to happen in the breakdown, so people can already know what's going to happen later on in the track. Basically, for effects, sometimes I make effects myself in the Silent or ES2. I think my most used plugins are the Massive, ES2 in Logic. I really like that one. ES1 sometimes. Synthmaster now, Zebra, Dune. There's a lot of really, really good plugins out there. And it's really nice sometimes to make your own effects with them, like noise sweeps and stuff. Some of my effects are I made and I just keep reusing them, but I edit them in Ableton. So every time when they're in a track, they sound different. I stretch them or I reverse them, do different things with it. What I also really like about Logic for effects, if you have noise thing, is to flex your sound and really extend the sound so you get some sort of a weird phasing effect. So for my effects section, I just do what feels right. But for me it's not the most important part, because if your kick drum and your bass line and your melody are good, especially now in 2012 when we make trance tracks, the most important thing are your kick drum and your bass line. And the loops and the effects, of course, are important for your arrangement. But if your kick drum and your bass line and your melody aren't right, then you'll have a very tough time finding the right sounds, because you don't get the impact. No matter how many crashes or reverse snares or noise fills you put in there, for me it is really essential to have a good kick and a good bass line and a good melody, so you know what your song is about. So that's why the effects section that I have here is all the way at the bottom, because for me it is the last thing that I worry about. There's a big discussion on the internet right now about what you do with the master bus. I have a weekly radio show called A State of Trance, and one of the things that worries me a little bit is that right now a lot of people put a lot of plugins on their master bus. And of course it makes it sound really cool, but if I play those tracks as a DJ in my sets, people get really tired. And it's such a shame because, especially with trance, there's so much information that goes on in a track that I think it's more important to get rid of frequencies than to add them. And what on a master bus usually happens is that compressors pull sounds up, and so when I start making a track, I never use any master bus compression. I always make sure that when I go into the kitchen, I go with the right ingredients. I go to the market, I buy some really nice meat or some really nice fish, and if my ingredients are right, my kick and my bass line, my drums, then I know that it's going to be a much more easy task for me. In this particular track, I put an ozone at the final bus. This is ozone 4. There's a new version of ozone. I think it's nice to have a little bit of compression limiting at the end, but please don't overdo it, because especially with my radio show, I hear so many tracks that are really great tracks. There's really great ideas there. You can hear that there's a great bass line going and a really nice melody. But the whole track is destroyed by winning the loudness war and putting on an ozone or 50 PSP vintage warmers and everything on the master bus. I mean, all these plugins are great plugins, but I find it's really a big problem. There's two ways of working. If you get inspired by using a master bus plugin, then use it. But please, when you finish the track, make sure you bounce a version with the master bus and one without. Send it to the mastering and tell your mastering guy, hey, this is how I want the track to sound. Can you help me? Because if your track breathes more, it has a lot bigger lifespan, especially with trance music. If you have too big a master bus compression, it just sounds too distorted and you get really tired, and I don't really want to play your track as a DJ because it's just too much information. So with this track, Suddenly Summer, when I was working, I didn't put the master bus compressor on. It just sounds like this. So this is the loudest part of my track, and it's clipping a little bit, actually quite a bit, but it sounds okay. Use your ears rather than looking at the meters. If it sounds good, if your track breathes, and if you have a feeling it's not over compressed, then at the end you can put the cherry on the cake by adding a little bit of compression. In this case, I didn't even use the limiter, I just used the ozone. So if I switch on the track now, you can hear what the ozone is actually doing. But there's still some headroom left for the masterer also. And when I send my tracks, I send an uncompressed version and a compressed version. So the master guy knows what I want my track to sound like, but maybe he can EQ a little bit. Sometimes it's better to use EQ than to use multiband compression. Of course, again, there are no rules in music. That's the first rule. And the second rule is C rule 1. You have to make up your own rules, I guess. But for me, there are no rules. So if your track sounds great, it sounds great, even if it sounds over-compressed. But I won't play it. Because for me, I like tracks to have a little bit of breath. Sometimes it can be cool to have your kick and your bass line compressed, put them on a bus channel and make them sound really good, and put nothing, maybe a little bit of limiting on your master bus. So this goes for me. I know there's other people that think differently about this. So that's absolutely fine. If you have a way of working that works for you, it's great. But I'm a little bit concerned as a DJ that don't overdo it. Use it wisely.